Hi and welcome to True Crime, a channel dedicated to the dark underworld of criminal activity carried out by gangsters, mobsters, cartel leaders, and others. Want to know who this soup man is? Who dissolved 500 vegetables? So you have landed on the right video. Let's get started. The Santiago Meza Lopez Pozolero. The glamorous side of cartels, their financial might, and their position are frequently shown in films. Few things are as sinister, disgusting, and horrible. As cartels burying the bodies of their rivals behind closed doors, Santiago is only home to those at the top of the pyramid. Meza Lopez was raised in poverty as the kid of a farmer and had a strong affinity towards animals. His affinity for animals attracted him to the drug cartels. Having an immediate financial necessity, Santiago began cooperating with the cartel of his former co-worker in 1996. You know how gangs offer you infinite riches for just a little dirty work? Always that's the hook to make a threat or carry out a shady drug trade within months. He performed their masonry work and looked after their horses. It was straightforwardly more lucrative than any labor he could undertake on his farm, and it was honest work. You'll be affluent. Unfortunately, Santiago fell into this trap, and before long, he was helping Arellano arrange heroin deals. At the turn of the century, the legendary Sinaloa cartel and the Arellano cartel engaged in a brutal conflict over the same trafficking routes into the United States. But cartel battles are anything but straightforward due to the ongoing attacks. Felix supported this by elevating him as he kept an eye on the depots in Tijuana. Kidnappings and murders were terrifying. Felix served as both their drug office manager and their drug dealer. He was committed and disciplined. A startling 24,000 people perished in a matter of years. But what do you do with all the corpses if you're the cartel head and don't want the police on your tail? The thousands of victims gave Santiago a job, which was a particularly troubling development. Santiago was invited to join Ramon and Benjamin Arellano fellas in a modest experiment in the late 1990s. He was given a leg of beef to toss into a vat that contained lye, commonly known as caustic soda, mixed with water and other chemicals. Santiago was instructed to monitor the beef while they attended to other concerns. Santiago would descend into anarchy a few hours later. While being nasty, it was nothing in comparison to what would happen next. 6 months after Santiago was informed of the experiment, the Arellano fellas brothers did so. He would perform their filthiest tasks and make their adversaries into bats of falsehood. The brothers were in over their heads with battle victims, literally, and simply dumping them in shady places wasn't cutting it anymore. So they approached overseas cartel members for assistance on how to deal with corpses. To bust cartels, the police were watching for any mistakes. When Santiago disintegrated his first human body, Benjamin and Ramon had many of his henchmen present to watch to see whether it would succeed in making all of their enemies into allies. Santiago removed the body and dipped it into the same mixture that had been in the larger drum, which was a 200-liter container. The drum's burner was lit and the liquid began to foam. After leaving the dish to stew all night, Santiago went to it the next morning to find nothing but a red liquid and a few pieces of little bone decorating the bottom of the pot. Before you asked, El Pozolero was already created. After learning from ELP that their experiment had been successful, the Arellano Felix brothers called in their truck driver, who took the container and drove it in the middle of the night to a nearby canyon, dumped the remains within, and then transported the container back to the cartel's headquarters. Jose is a Mexican word for beef and corn soup that has nothing to do with Superman. I am sure that El Pozolero ruined the meal horribly. This is how the Tijuana cartel wants to dispose of their corpses, so Santiago became their head cleaner. Everything related to acquiring oil canisters was handled by El Pozolero. Caustic soda and latex-coated gloves. El Pozolero appeared to be completely unconcerned about his line of work, and given that he was now directly under drug kingpin Teodoro Garcia Cemental, sometimes known as El Tio, it's possible that he was even taking pleasure in it. He would send El Pozolero a text message with a location whenever he had a new body that needed to be disposed of, but it would never be an easy exchange. He was called up to find out which car the body was in when several automobiles came. The body would then be loaded into the car with the help of two goons, and Pozolero would drive off to his lab, where he would handle the body. Occasionally, several bodies would be handled at once, and when he was done, he would take the bone fragments and drop them into sizable pits below the ground. El Pozolero was ruthlessly violent and stubborn, which led to several hitches between him and the Arellano Felix brothers in 2008. In 2008, things reached a boiling point when El Tio decided to switch sides and join the biggest rival cartel in the area of El Chapo and El Mayo Sinaloa, and since El Pozolero was his man, he took him with him. This is how El Pozolero came to be. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, True Crime Chronicles, before continuing. It's creepy on so many levels that he appeared unconcerned while the remains of his former comrades were being disintegrated. At his time and place, El Pozolero made a tremendous wage of 600 pesos each week. His horrible career with the Sinaloa cartel would abruptly end in less than a year, but he could afford nearly anything he wanted and had developed into a terrible sort of celebrity in the cartel world. His whereabouts were discovered by Mexican officials in January 2009, thanks to an unnamed tip. He was churning something foul when the officers stormed in. He was likewise drunk and his speech was slurred. He stated it was food soup when they questioned him about what it was. It's merely a hunch what it was. El Pozolero opted to confess after his arrest. He asserted that he had disintegrated roughly 300 bodies, although this assertion is false. Mexico's media covered the case extensively. Was there no alternative to the soup man job with Santiago in prison, as El Quilito's wife noted to the media? Would he truly say, "I prefer my job than for my family to die of hunger"? The chicken coop was his grisly resting place, which was discovered by the cops. El Pozolero was presented as a macabre soup master who had carried out the cartel's orders without hesitation for more than 10 years. By 2017, 250 kilos, or 500 pounds, of bones and bone fragments had been taken out. The unnerving twist was that Kate's nearby chicken coop, a little farm next to the highway, was also used to raise hens. Only 70 of the numerous bodies of El Pozolero were obliterated there, despite it being the perfect mass for El Pozolero's terrible activities. Empty lots and forested areas in Tijuana had been the destination for the containers containing the 16,500 gallons of human waste that had been hauled from those locations. Imagine all the victims, whose names will never be known because of the heinous disposal method used by the cartels, all the undiscovered remains. What's more, El Pozolero gave instructions on how to disintegrate bodies, and even put in a drainage system during his final years of employment to make the process easier and cleaner for his followers. He conversed with investigators about the difficulty of moving the heavy corpses, attributing their movement to the devil. After cleaning up, they stored the barrel, and he complained about the physical labor involved, as if it were just another job. When questioned about his remorse for his actions, he claimed to have informed the cartel that he no longer wanted to participate, but felt compelled to comply with their demands. They cleaned the drain with hot water to remove leftover debris. El Pozolero maintained that he had never killed any of his victims or dismembered the bodies of children. Despite being found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2012, he claimed during the trial that he was not a killer but merely an employee following orders. In his final statement, he asked for forgiveness and apologized to the victims' families. However, his failure to disclose the locations of the remaining remains left the families dissatisfied. El Pozolero was released from prison in April 2022, causing outrage among some families who believed his sentence should have been more severe. However, given his association with the cartel, his defense of acting under duress becomes somewhat persuasive, as alerting the police could have put him in danger. However, although the extent of the cartel's conflicts may be difficult to comprehend, it does not excuse El Pozolero's numerous heinous acts committed under their directives. In the Tijuana region, Mexican authorities continue to uncover skeletal remains, leaving one to wonder how many individuals are still involved in the type of work El Pozolero engaged in back in 2009 and who they victimized. Was El Pozolero a cruel offender indifferent to the pain and suffering of others, or was he simply an ordinary person trapped in a web of cartel coercion and violence, incapable of escaping without being apprehended? Thank you for watching another amazing video from our true crime team. Like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned to our next real-life true crime video.